What's up, family? It is your host with the most, JP, and welcome back to the Indie Sooner YouTube channel and the JP and Trav show. To my right, I have my brother, Travis J. Davidson. Travis, how you feeling, man?
Man, I'm doing great, man. It's always good to have a guest that you got multiple ties with. Obviously, a big week for us with the defensive coordinator hire, but we're here to talk college football for the most part and the transition from college to pro. But yeah, I'm doing really well. And Thor, I'll let you introduce yourself, kind of what you getting into these days, background, whatnot, and then we'll start getting into kind of some of the OU prospects, specifically OU prospects that were at the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, Thor Nystrom. Find me on Fantasy Pros, NFL Draft, and college football, and Twitter at ThorKU. And just got back from the Senior Bowl in Mobile, and pumped to be with you guys and talk about what we saw at the Senior Bowl.
Absolutely. JP, how you doing? You good?
Yeah, man, I'm good. I'm just getting over a little cold. It was a lot of games last week. Thor, I'm an athletic director, so we had a senior night last Friday, and I was busy all last week. I think it hit me over the weekend, so I'm coming down from a little cold, but I'm doing all right. I'm here.
That's all right. You in recovery mode. That's fine. You're getting back to it, definitely.
Yeah.
But old James in the comments says no Norwegian accent. He's so disappointed, Thor.
People make fun of me about the Minnesota accent, especially when I go down to a place like Mobile. It didn't happen this year, but last year we found this like hole in the wall bar in Mobile the first night we were there, and the people next to us figured out that we were from Minnesota, me and my coworker, and they started asking us to say these various words so then they could laugh at us. So they made us say big over and over, say big. And they're like, that's not how it's pronounced. And so then I would give them words back to say, and I'd be like, that's not how that word's pronounced. And so we're just making fun of each other's accent the whole time.
Nice. Well, hopefully they bought you a couple beers to make up for it. And of course, he's trying to say bag for those of you in the southern part of the Midwest.
That is what I was saying.
Yeah, exactly. Just so we're all very, very clear. So, anyways, like I said, so happy to have you on. I'm actually going to start with a bit of a wild card. As you know, we signed our first 5-star defensive lineman in a long time, PJ Adebaware. And his brother played for Northwestern and is at the Senior Bowl. Was at the Senior Bowl. So tell us what it was like with him and maybe what we might expect by somebody kind of in that family, right? So when it comes from, if you got to chat with him at all, if you heard scouts talking about him, and maybe just a little bit about him, and then we'll get into all the OU guys.
He was one of the guys I did not, unfortunately, get a chance to talk to. I had a chance to talk to his teammate, Evan Hall. And Evan Hall was a riser that I had my eye on going in. That kid, maybe not as much. He opened my eyes there, and he elicited a lot of chatter. I mean, and it started, first of all, during the weigh-ins, the measurements or whatever, because that kid is like stupid long. Like he's like a comic book. He measured in at it was 6'2", 284, but his wingspan is over 82 inches, and his hand size was almost 11 inches. Like, he had the biggest damn hands. Like I think the entire event. Like I'm looking through right now to see if anyone hit 11 or like I think he had literally the biggest hands of the entire event. So he's a little bit traditionally under in terms of like that 3 technique whatever. Although you can use him in the edge as well. That's something that impresses well in Mobile. His ability to move up and down the line. You can do various different things with him and be situationally specific with him. So like the skill set is super versatile, and I think there was some defensive coaches there sort of licking their chops at the idea of sort of getting to mold that ball of clay, who was stuck in a really bad situation last fall, as you gentlemen know.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, we couldn't be more excited. Obviously, PJ, as he likes to be called, he people can, Adepoju or whatever. Apparently he will tell you, just call me PJ. You don't have to worry about it. One of the more low-key recruitments really throughout throughout the whole process, right? It's identified him early. Northwestern was obviously in on him. And then Oklahoma got in on him early while he was still a 3-star, actually, when they got in. Rose all the way to 5-star status, number 9 player in the country. I'm sure a little bit of it was that, his brother had kind of seen his draft stock go up a little bit and brought some more attention to kind of the athleticism and the potential. JP, we can start wherever with the OU guys. I don't know if you got them listed out or anything, or Thor, you can just start it off, whatever we want to do.
However, where do you guys want to start? You pick the flavor.
Tell us about Eric Gray. What did you see from Eric Gray?
Where I was going.
Yeah, Eric Gray, he impressed, but it wasn't like, so Tajay Spears is the guy that was just like consistently sort of like jumping off the field. And then there was guys that like, I mentioned Evan Hall, where he more like surprised, and so he elicited chatter because he was over a lot of people's expectations. Eric Gray was everything he was advertised to be, if not a little bit better. But you guys know, like, Eric Gray's game, it's not like one specific thing where he's like super duper elite. Like a lot of these running backs, you can point to one trait where it's like, wow, he's really special. Like, Tajay Spears with the explosion or whatever. But like Eric Gray, he's just super duper, like the whole entire skill set is very well fleshed out, between the receiving utility. And then like, I guess the thing you would point to with him as a running back is he's super elusive, but like, in conjunction with that, he has the instincts and everything like that. But he showed all the skills that you saw specifically on the film last year after sort of the wonky year in 2021, his first year at Oklahoma. You saw the skills you saw last year when he was playing really well. You saw those in Mobile, sort of an understated good week, but a good week nonetheless. I mean, like the fans of his heading into the week are still fans and maybe even bigger fans. And he probably converted a couple of people that maybe weren't as high on him for whatever reason coming to maybe because they'd watched the 2021 or, whatever.
Right. Yeah. I think we noticed a massive difference specifically from his strength and conditioning, right? Yeah. Obviously you get Schmitty back in the building, Coach Jerry Schmidt, get him back in the building. And it seems like Eric is trusting his body more when he runs. He's usually able to break a little bit of first contact, at least get through it, maybe shed it. He's not a guy that's obviously just going to, plow right over you often, but I think he started to run with a lot more confidence. And then, the coaches talked about, specifically DeMarco talked about his patience, how when you're running up tempo, it's important to remember, like, the play itself doesn't have to be up tempo. Like, in between snaps is how you gain your leverage in up tempo. So, in 2021, he was really rushing the line. He'd run into the back of his blockers, everything like that. And he wasn't really waiting, not full-blown Le'Veon Bell style, just standing back there and hanging out, but really would hit the hole after a little while. And I know a prospect we definitely want to hear about because he's been, big team captain. He's super popular with the entire fan base. Braden Willis.
Yeah, and he was another kid that had a good Senior Bowl week. And because like with Willis, you're wondering heading in, like, he's more of the H back. Can he do tight end stuff? Is that what it's going to be? Is it a cap ceiling? And you're already sort of preparing yourself to be underwhelmed. Mm-hmm. But he impresses you as a blocker in space. Like that kid gets after it. Standing up as an inline tight end over a full season in the NFL, I think that would be one thing as a blocker. But as a lead blocker or a guy blocking in space against guys that are even close to his weight, you're totally going to trust him to do that at the NFL level, move him around, do stuff like that. And the kid's got some receiving skill too. Like, he's not a one-trick pony. There's a pretty well diversified skill set there, both in terms of the receiving, but also, like, as you guys know, they handed him the ball quite a bit. I think he even had the game where he played a little bit of wildcat quarterback, and they did stuff like that. So, like, we've tried to
forget about that game. We've tried to forget about that game in its entirety, but we do appreciate that he tried to do his best as a wildcat quarterback, no doubt, because he played quarterback in high school, so he can sling it too. So no doubt about it. But it's kind of an interesting thing because obviously Jeremiah Hall came in the class before him. And a lot of people were like, okay, like, he eventually got picked up by the Giants, and he was going through just all the preseason type stuff, trying to make the team. And it was always those two host the podcast together, Pod on the Prairie, and then like close friends. They're definitely those guys that cared enough to get their degree or degrees. Definitely took advantage of the entire student athlete experience. So naturally, the comparison, they played the same position for the most part. I mean, more halfback than tight end, I guess, for Jay Hall. But so I think a lot of people just thought, hey, we'll see. But like, I think Braden's a little bit bigger, and he is a destructive blocker. That's one thing we noticed a couple, especially around the outside. Like there was one play where he took it, we had handed it to a walk-on in like a jet sweep, and he blocked like 3 or 4 dudes on the same play and was running out with them. I mean, that's somebody that I think, will get drafted, but will make his money on special teams for a long time. Because he's just so versatile in that. But Indy, go to you.
Yeah, obviously we hit kind of some of the skill players, but I wanted to hit a couple of the guys that we've had on the line that's been big for us the last few years. Starting the offensive side of the ball, obviously Wanye Morris. What did you think of him?
Yeah, his Senior Bowl for me was the sort of the exact same as his tape, where it like you'd have long stretches where he was playing really solid, and then you'd have a short stretch where everything sort of went awry.
Yeah,
the kid's built really well. He's long. He's got the powerful lower half. He's got some power in his hands and stuff like that, and he moves solidly well. And when you think about like you just sort of add all those things together, and then you come out with the number at the end of it. It's like this number. It's bigger than what he actually is right now, and it's because of some of these inconsistencies. And like on some plays, it's just like he just loses his. I don't know, like his technique, I guess would be the simple way to say it. But like, it's like some days you just don't feel like cleaning your room. And it's like on some plays, he just doesn't feel like minding his technique or like what he's been taught. I'm not sure if it's like a lazy thing or if he just, he disengages for a couple of reps. But like, again, this is something that you guys watching Oklahoma. It's something that you see on the game film. And then it was something that you saw at the Senior Bowl too, where he would string together a couple of these reps, and it's like, Jesus. Like, I mean, he is getting licked out there. But then he would turn it around. He'd have long stretches where then he'd go back to being solid again. The entire thing for him going forward, it does, like the pre-draft process, I don't really care about that, because like the thing he has to correct, it's whatever that is. Like he just needs to get more consistent, showing up, play in, play out, minding that technique, and allowing his natural gifts to take over.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that's probably what a lot of Sooner fans felt this year. Trav, you can correct me if you think I'm wrong, but I mean,
I agree. I agree, and it was one of those things that he had some issues with. I think some tutor type stuff that he had to get taken care of, and then there was an issue with I think his rent. Like he didn't pay his rent on time. Like just little stuff where it's like, dude, you got a big opportunity here. Like go do it. And there's a lot of those guys like. I mean, athletes all over the world, really, but guys we've seen come through OU that maybe take some plays off or anything like that. But then in the big moments, I personally think of like a Trey Brown, like even back to his high school days, like he was known as the kid that he was a burner in track. I mean, he was a track star, but he wouldn't even show up to track practice. But once he showed up to a meet, if some kid from across town was talking noise about how he was going to dust him, then Trey'd show out and blow his doors off. Same thing. That's why you saw him, go crazy in OU Texas or the Big 12 championship or chasing down the Baylor guy, like that kind of stuff. Like you hope that, and he's done well with Seattle early, but you hope that Wanye is like, okay, this is big boy stuff right now. If I want to be an NFL player, there's no taking any plays off. There's no, lapses in my technique. There's no lapses in my care for what I'm doing, right? Like you've got to be absolutely obsessed with perfection when you're playing for that type of money, that type of opportunity.
Yeah. Another one, Thor, I wanted to ask you about was on defensive line, Jalen Redmond, who's Oklahoma City native. What did you think of him?
Yeah, Another guy that you were frustrated with in college, guys, he just never seemed to equal the sum of his parts. And for me, that was the same story at the Senior Bowl. Didn't really stick out to me in a positive way. The inconsistencies, you're still seeing that with him. You want him to just take off and let the physical skills take over, and it hasn't clicked for him in the same way that it hasn't with Wanya. It's not the exact same issue there. But like I feel like there's a dormancy of his skill set that's still sort of lying there like a volcano waiting to erupt, and it just hasn't completely been unlocked yet. But like you squint your eyes, you can see some of the really good 3 technique, like the skill set there within him. But like I said, it just hasn't fully come to the fore yet, or certainly manifested in a consistent rep to rep fashion.
Yeah, that's something we saw at Oklahoma. I mean, his health had always been an issue. Had the blood clots issue going on, and he had wild production early on. And that's, I think, why everybody said, like, you can see the upside there. Like, the upside is right under your nose. But again, he took off the COVID year because, again, like, wasn't sure, like, you need to be vaccinated, but wasn't sure with his blood clot history. You just wanted to be safe, right? And then he finally comes back, and we think, okay, here it is. Here's the breakout season. And it doesn't happen, but the top end's there. Now, a lot of time, and tell me what you think about this. Some people say that NFL scouts specifically, they look at what your top end is because they feel like the NFL can get your top end out of you more consistently than maybe college coaches can or something like that. Partly because obviously there's no class. There's no like, you're financially stable. You're a professional. There's no, this, that, the other. Like, you are a football player through and through. Like, the student athlete, moniker is out the window. So what do you think about that? When you're looking at these prospects, is it the absolute top end, or do you pretty much treat it like, hey, look, the way you played in college is pretty much the way you're going to play in the NFL?
I try to take it situation by situation because, like, you guys know, like, when you're, I mean, even like thinking about like your friends or like your other contacts, when you think about, you have to take everyone situation by context by context. You have to bake the context of that situation in when you're thinking about any person situation, and all these guys have different ones, right? Like, I mean, you were going deeper into the Wanya stuff. Some of the stuff I didn't even know. But it's funny because that sort of lines up with his on-field profile too. And it's like, Wanya, come on, like, let's lock it in off the field too, and then let's lock it in on the field. But like, with all this stuff, you're just baking in the context. And then, yeah, like if, like you're trying to, ascertain like what is the upside, and then what's the percentage that they hit it, and then what's sort of the shades beneath that, right? Mm-hmm. Like what's the 50% outcome, the median outcome, and then if they bust, what does that look like? Are they just wash out of the league right away? Some guys are talented enough where even if they bust, they're going to be around for 8 or 9 years. What would that look like? So it's just like a percentage thing and then fleshing it out like that. But for the context, I think it has to be situation specific.
Right. I think Braden Willis is a guy I look at that's like, maybe the upside isn't there for like a tight end. Like, he's not 6'7". He's not doing a lot of these things. But, I mean, just from a work mentality, professionalism mentality, leadership, like like he's going to interview extremely well. Like GMs are going to absolutely love him. Coaches are going to love him. And I think you probably get a little bit more benefit of the doubt on some stuff if you're willing to put in that work and know you're going to show up on time. I mean, you get it with college coaches right all the time. It's like, hey, if I don't have to worry about your classes and I don't got to worry about you off the field, then that's who I'm going to play because I'm not your teacher. I'm not your babysitter. I'm your football coach. So I need you to be here as just a football player. So really excited. Do you do anything? Do you project any draft rounds or anything like that while you go through these processes, or is there just too many kids?
By the end of it, yeah. Like by the end of usually about a week before the draft, I put out a 500 player big board with 500 comps. And then like one of my random pet peeves about the draft process is like when people who have jobs like I do, when they're like, oh, I have 15 guys with first round grades. It's like, no, you actually have 32 because there's 32 first round picks.
Right.
So I like break, 32, that's a first round. And then, I guess this year it'd be 31 because the Dolphins got in trouble. But then, we just break it down exactly how the draft does and then break them into the rounds like that.
Nice. So very similar to how like 247 or somebody would do in their final rankings. There are 32 5 stars. That's what they try at least.
Oh yeah.
32 five stars because they are saying that this person can be a first round pick one day. So they're basically trying to guess the first rounders, and those are all the 5 stars. So
yeah,
and I the same thing.
Yeah, I feel like the top 32 people on anyone's board, by definition, for a 32-person first round, those have to be the players with its first round grades. And by the way, returning to your last thing on Willis, I agree with you. He's going to be helped by his personality and sort of what he gets across in those team meetings. And those team meetings are more important than people think out there. Like they're a legitimate part of the process. You can argue that they hold too much weight, but there's people like Bill Belichick that would say no, they don't, and he would be right because he's more successful than anybody else. One other thing I was going to say contextually that I think is really going to help Willis in this process, you've seen the last couple of years, like, you know, there was that time where it was like the fullback is dead and they're phasing the fullback out. But like now in recent years, you've started to see this like hybrid-y type, you know, H-back, fullback, tight endy type, like this movable chess piece thing come back. Use check, you know, is a primary example of this where, you know, I guess technically he's a fullback, but like they move him all over like he's an H-back because they just move him on every play and he lines up everywhere. And then the Rams, you know, they decided they wanted to do this. They converted a Northwestern receiver, Ben Schoenrock or whatever his name is, to do the same thing. So they could have him in the backfield and then motion them all around, whatever. That Willis kid, you know, like if there's, you know, 16 offenses in the NFL that utilize this, and like if you're starting to project him as one of the 16 best guys on earth at this specific skill set, and I think you can get there. Well, that, I mean, all of a sudden now he's got some draft import. That's Willis's route to getting drafted in the middle of day 3, where it seems like we can get this kid on the field like fairly early in his career for 65% of our offensive snaps. And he's the guy who is going to allow us to get tells from the defense before the snap happens. So we're going to move him every single time, and they're going to have to give us tells. Right.
Right. And I don't want to, I mean, I don't want to compare him to obviously, you know, Pro Bowlers and all this. I try to keep it somewhat reasonable to be like, oh yeah, he's the same size as this Hall of Famer, so he's probably going to be a Hall of Famer, you know. But like George Kittle is a guy that's undersized traditionally. I mean, he's not the big Gronk and all this. Like, it's, you know, he's 6'4", 250. Like, I think Braden Willis measured at nearly 6'4", maybe 6'3" and 7. Like 3/4 or something like that. So you look at that, he's about 10 pounds lighter than Kittle, but you know, you can kind of see him, to your point, in that role, kind of move him around a little bit and, you know, just see what he can do. Because again, he's had to know offenses because, again, quarterback had to play. I mean, in OU, Texas, the biggest rivalry game, we're like, hey, you know what? We trust you with the offense, you know, for part of the game. So, yeah, I think there's absolutely a lot that goes into that. JP,
he also had a 79-inch wingspan, by the way, which is atypically long for a 6'3" plus, you know, almost 6'4", like you said. But yeah, I mean, he's long too. They're gonna like that.
Yeah, he does have long arms.
Yeah, I mean, they ain't PJ Adebawore long, but 79 inches is pretty ridiculous. So, JP is a big Colts fan. He's there in Indy. Thor, you and I talk about Vikings all the time. So I need to know what your initial expectations are for JP's Colts going into this next season, whether that's, you know, coaching wise, what they're like, and you know, what kind of quarterback play they intend on getting or anything like that. What do you think?
Oh man, it is. I feel like for that team in particular, it's just too early to say, right? Like, because they haven't said about their course. There's so many, what do you say, balls up in the air as far, like, you know, with the quarterback, where are they going to go? They have one of the most interesting, like, to think about, like the draft needy, the quarterback needy draft teams. They're one of the most interesting thought experiments because people afforded this idea that they're going to trade up to number 1. And they might, you know, like you can easily make the argument that they're the most motivated team to do so. And that Irsay will be like the most aggressively like pushing his GM in the back of like, get this done. But But then you start to think of like, who would they be taking if they did? I don't know if you guys saw this, but Lance Zierlein had a really interesting tidbit in his writing about how he had visited the Colts war room and he had seen the size thresholds that Ballard had by position. His height threshold at quarterback, it's 6'1". Bryce Young is not going to measure in at 6'1". I don't think he's even going to measure in at 6 foot. So Bryce Young does not fit the Colts' size threshold. And so it's like, if they don't want Bryce Young, then could they sit back where they are? If obviously then they would have a different top quarterback. That would imply that maybe they wouldn't want to draft Bryce Young at all. But then, do they sniff that maybe the Texans like one of the other quarterbacks, or that the Bears would trade to another team, that would start sort of a cascading effect where two quarterbacks could get taken above them? They're just a really interesting team, but it's hard to even start to address that question because so many like key players of next year's Colts team are not on the team right now. We just don't know who they're going to be.
Yeah. Yeah, that's my issue. We don't know where we're going. This last year was a mess. The last couple of years was a mess. I was upset when we got Matt Ryan. I was like, why are we continuing to go after old quarterbacks? And nothing against Matt, but I'll tell you, I didn't feel like our offensive line was going to do what it did this year and not live up to their billing. And so, we are where we are. I personally would rather have CJ Stroud than Bryce Young from a standpoint of, if our line is good enough, I feel like he can do a lot more. But I understand that, Bryce Young is talented, and I understand that he's more mobile, I would say, than CJ Stroud is. But if we get to CJ Stroud from, the Georgia-Ohio State game, I'm cool with it. I personally don't want Will Levis or Anthony Richardson. I think I'm not a project guy, and I feel like those two are more projects than not. And Thor, you could probably break that down on if I'm wrong or not, but that's just at least my opinion from what I've seen.
No, you are for sure. Yeah, Richardson is the straight project. He's the straight shoot for the moon. Like if you hit, he's going to be nuts. He's going to be like Dante Culpepper on steroids. But like if he doesn't, you just blew a first round pick. Levis, he's more interesting in that in 2020, like people will give Levis the credit or the caveat of like, oh, well, this year, they lost all this talent. He was playing with a crappy team. So just excuse away how poorly he played this year. Like, and along almost every match, like under pressure, he was awful. Like one of the worst in the class. Converting pressures into sacks, he was one of the worst, like in this entire quarterback class. Like things that are specific to your performance, like not your teammates. Yeah. But like if you're going to give him that caveat, you also need to say that the year before, when he was awesome, he was playing with. Can I swear on this thing or no?
Yeah, YouTube.
Oh, okay. He was playing with a shit ton of NFL guys the year before. Kentucky had one of the best offensive lines in the nation. Like multiple of those guys went on to be picked in the NFL draft. And then Wan'Dale Robinson was a top 50 pick. And then you had Chris Rodriguez for the full season. This past year, he was suspended for the first month of the season. But you can't have it one way, right? Like Levis played way better in 2021 with a better team. And then he was not good last year with the way worse team. But again, you have to bake in context on both sides of it if you're going to do that. He does have the really good arm, and he does have athleticism. You guys know he was recruited to Penn State to be James Franklin. What does he call it? Stupid position, super back or whatever. The thing Tommy Stevens was doing before that. The guy the guy that run. He James Franklin's so funny. He always has the one huge quarterback that runs around but can't place the ball. And then and he has another position name for that. But then the other quarterbacks that he always gets, it's like the noodle arm scrambler. It's like Clifford and McSorley. It's weird. It's like, James, can you try to get more towards the middle? Maybe that's what he's doing with Drew Allaire. But yeah, anyway.
McSorley always cracked me up because everybody always thought he was Baker Mayfield 2.0. Like we had to hear that so much, like Baker Mayfield 2.0. And that was fresh enough for OU fans that they're like, no, it ain't no such thing as a Baker 2.0. There's never going to be another Baker Mayfield. Get it out of here. I think Herb Street was one of the first ones to be like, this guy's got a lot of Baker Mayfield in him. I think, you're looking at Baker Mayfield here, just all that moxie. So
yeah. Plenty of moxie had that guy. That's why they invited him to the Senior Bowl. It's the only fight I ever got in with Jim Nagy on Twitter, but I was making fun of the Senior Bowl for taking Trace McSorley over Easton Stick from North Dakota State, and Jim Nagy was not happy with me. And so we snipped back at it and forth with each other. But I'd seen plenty of Trace McSorley's work by that point. I was pretty confident in my take. So.
Hey, that's a good one. That one aged well. What do you think about quarterback height? You bring up Chris Ballard's thresholds and whatnot. Do you subscribe to you need a Justin Herbert out there, you need a Josh Allen out there, you need these type of big guys, or are you willing to take a chance on like a Kyler Murray or somebody like that that's a little bit shorter? Not a little bit shorter. Kyler's tiny, but I'm saying Bryce that's a little bit shorter.
No, it's funny. I used to be more with the traditional stuff, but I felt like I fucked up with Kyler. I didn't have him like super duper low, but I think I ranked him like, I don't know, 12 or 15 that year. And I felt like I should have had him higher. And I felt like the reason I had him a little bit lower was just because of the size thing. Cause I just hadn't seen that at that level before. And he proved to me that he can play there. Is he the best player in the NFL? No, but it's viable. And if your game is viable, it's going to be viable. Some of these guys, you have to project it because you haven't seen it in that package. And that's where the art of this comes. Look, Tank Dell, right? Tank Dell, we don't see many guys come along in that physical package, but he has a special, he has a superpower. It's the way that he moves. That guy's like fucking air. Like water. He's just it's so difficult to get your hands on him. It's like the wind coming through the stadium. You can't catch it in your hand. But that's what you have to do sometimes and try to project with these guys who have atypical physical profiles is, do they have any of those sort of special sauce trump cards that's going to allow them to succeed in a way where all the other players before them at that size where they weren't able to. And then you hope that you get some proof of life of that. At these, whether it's the all-star events like Tank Dell destroying everyone in the open field in the one-on-ones in Mobile, like he was doing all of his college career. And then also in Indianapolis, as far as the testing, does this guy with the atypical profile, does he test special in any specific way that manifests on his film or whatever? But I don't categorically knock people down for that anymore. And Bryce Young is the number one play. He's just the best player in the draft. I ain't going to knock him down because I don't care what he measures in at. I seen plenty of that guy. That guy's a fucking killer. He's the best player in this draft. He just is.
Yeah. That's it's funny because, a guy like Bryce Young who played in the SEC, that played against good competition, that played, in college football playoffs and SEC championship games. And those are the guys, if he could compete with those guys, it's not like he was playing, in even the ACC, even the Pac-12 or even the Big 12. You've got just a different size body and a different skilled body in the SEC right now. Thank God that we're going there now. But it's a situation where okay, if he's good enough to do this to the best players in college football, you don't think he can do it with NFL players on his team too? Yeah. I think that's what a lot of people forget when it comes to competition is we heard it a lot with Dylan Gabriel. It's the competition isn't going to be what he's seeing with the Big 12. I was yeah, he didn't have a bunch of OU players on his team either. That's a little bit different. You got to understand, all the people on the field have to take that into account.
1,000%. Yeah, it's a really good point, and yeah, I just feel like people don't bake some of this stuff in enough sometimes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no doubt. JP, what you got?
Yeah, no, and here's the thing. Between Bryce Young and CJ Stroud, I won't lie. I do think Bryce Young is the better player. I do struggle-ish with the height thing, and I normally don't, and I didn't with Kyler. I think I'm just the last 3 years I've been struggling as a Colts fan, just with all the quarterbacks we've had, and I'm just CJ's the one thing that I'm I feel like he's close enough to Bryce, and then he's got that the height. Is he sick? He's 6'3", right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. 6'3", legit. And so for me, and if I hadn't seen the way he played against Georgia, I probably wouldn't have said that. But seeing the way he played against Georgia, I know he's got Marvin Harrison Jr. and Emeka Egbuka and Julian Fleming, and he didn't even have Jack Smith and Jigba out there. I know he's got a ton of receivers, and I know that we need a little bit of wide receiver help in Indy. But if our offensive line get back to being what they were the last couple of years, Quentin Nelson, I don't know if he's gonna. I don't know if he's a shell of himself or what. Obviously he's still better than a lot of guards, but he had a rough year this year. But anyways, regardless of all that, if we can get back to that, I would love to see him in Indy. I'd love to see either of them in Indy, but I think I'd still side with CJ Stroud just because of the height discrepancy. But that's just me.
Yeah, he's certainly built the right way. The season before you were sort of alluding to this, before the Georgia game, his game had just sort of strangely fell off this year earlier, and I wasn't really sure why. Some of the circumstances with that team were weird. Like I kept expecting Ohio State to get upset during the regular season. Like I'm talking before the Michigan game, because they just seem weird and off. And then, of course, you had the Jackson Smith and Jigba thing, and then the running back room, like they couldn't get it healthy at the same time. Like Travion Henderson would be out one week and Mike Williams would be out the other week. And the other kid was Dallas Hayden, whatever. He gotten hurt before, or Evan Pryor, I'm sorry. I gotten hurt before the year, and they had all these depth concerns, and they're moving people back and forth. And like it seemed like, I don't know, he got kind of like caught up in some of those changes. You just wasn't playing as well. But like to your point about the Georgia game, not only did like we get sort of like the CJ Stroud at the peak of his powers, but he also brought things out in his arsenal that we hadn't seen before.
Yeah.
Specifically the mobility aspect, taking yards when when Georgia was like, we're going to drop 7 guys or 8 guys on a specific play. Like, we're not going to let you beat us through the air. And because we know you're not going to run. And CJ Stroud's like, hold my fucking beer. Like because you watch me on film, but look what I can do now. Yeah. So you'd see that, but then also the ability to throw on the run and the ability to sort of solve complex questions with the correct answer while throwing on the run. It was a wildly impressive game, particularly in lieu of, all the monsters on that Georgia defense. But, again, just the peak of his powers with all these weaknesses that he seemed to be addressing one by one during that game.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of college football playoff quarterbacks, give me your take on Max Duggan. Max Duggan obviously lost the job coming out of camp to former OU quarterback Chandler Morris. A lot of people like what they saw when Morris here. Obviously, his dad is a very successful coach, offensive mind. So you like to think that he's got a pretty good understanding of different offenses. So a lot of people, around these parts were looking forward to seeing Chandler Morris start for TCU. Now, all of a sudden, he gets hurt. Max Duggan's in, and everybody's like, okay, cool, same old Max Duggan. And then, boom, was this just lightning in a bottle situation? Was it the fact that they played a lot of quarterbacks, or they played a lot of backup quarterbacks because they kept getting injured or getting hurt amazingly by that defense? Walk-off field goals with time expiring, this, that, and the other. Like what do you think Max Duggan's pro prospects are?
Well, starting with the TCU thing, I had money on that opener on TCU against Colorado. I watched the entire game, and Chandler Morris, he started out really poorly. Like he was really, like the offense just wasn't going. It wasn't clicking. And so when he got hurt, I don't want to say I was happy, but like I wanted the offense to start. Like I needed to cover 14.5 points or whatever. And when Duggan came in, the offense immediately spurred with him. And what's interesting to think about, like in hindsight, it's like, was that just a bad day at the office for Chandler Morris? Like we know now what the TCU, what else was around the quarterback there, how many guys, like how many horses they had on that offensive line, some guys that we're going to see drafted, and that Avila kid looks really good. Like, I mean, he's going to go top 50, whatever, but like, they're going to have other ones too. Obviously Quentin Johnson, they're going to have at least one of the other receivers drafted. And then we're going to see Kendre Miller drafted as well. DeMarcado, maybe, but otherwise a UDFA. It would be interesting to know if Chandler Morris, if he had, come back, or, like if he'd never gotten hurt, whatever, the next weeks would then he have started to play up with the supporting cast, or was that anything specific to Dugan? But the offensive sort of alterations that I saw them making with Dugan, it obviously worked really well in conjunction with what they had, like more of the RPO stuff, and you saw more running with that than you'd seen with the Sonny Dykes teams of the past. Like for instance, when he had Goff, when he was at Cal, and it was more like the traditional air raid or whatever. Like the TCU team last year was actually super duper balanced. Like you wouldn't have thought it was like a Sonny Dykes team. It was more like a new agey RPO, play action kind of a team, whatever. But as far as Dugan's pro evaluation, I wish I liked him more. To be honest with you, I like a lot of things about him. He's athletic. He's tough as shit. Everybody around him raves about him. Like, like Sonny Dykes, every time you ask him a goddamn question about him, Sonny Dykes starts fucking crying. It's like all of his teammates, all of his coaches love the kid. They'd all die for him. And the leadership and everything like that. You want to like, and he's got a solid arm too. Like he can push the ball down the field and everything like that. The issue is he can't read the field. Even when Sonny Dykes cut it like a cake for him and just cut it into like a quarter, or cut the field in half for him, he still has problems with the thing just going click, 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 click. Like he needs to see that receiver open, but then he also needs to see him get into the route break open. And then he needs to see him take 2 steps and be open before he can tell himself, Max, he's open. Now's the time to cock the ball back. And you see him just patting the ball. He's a one read guy. When the primary receiver is not there, he takes off and runs. And that worked at TCU. It worked last year in the same way that Sam Howell, his last year at UNC, could run for, 1,100 yards against that shitty ACC schedule UNC was played in 2021. But that's not going to work in the NFL. Sam Howell's never going to run for 1,000 yards in the NFL. And Max Dugan, he's not going to be stealing yards wonton out of the pocket when his first read's gone in the NFL. Yeah. That shit just ain't going to work. So you're going to have to process quicker there. And that's where it all breaks down for me. I just never saw him going across the field. I rarely even saw him get to the second guy and make the correct decision on time.
Yeah. It's it'll be interesting to watch. Like I think obviously you talk about Sonny Dykes having the traditional air raid back when he was at Cal, and then I think it's no coincidence that Garrett Riley, had some impact on that change, because a lot of people looking at Lincoln Riley's teams, like when they talk about OU scoring all those points, everybody was like, oh, well, he's just the air raid guy. Like, not at all. Like Lincoln called more run plays than he did pass plays when he was at Oklahoma. So it's like you can actually run the ball a lot. So that's where I think I don't want to say anything nice about the Riley family on this pod. Andy will kick me off. But speaking of former Oklahoma quarterbacks, there's one that we saw their like mock draft season, stock just skyrocket, be right at the top, and then come crashing down. And then I don't really know where it is now, but give me your thoughts on one Spencer Rattler.
Oh, yeah. But I didn't know where you were going with that, but I'm happy we get to talk about Spencer Rattler. He's had a ride, hadn't he? You watch that QB1 show and you're like, man, this kid seems like a real POS. And then
he needed some humbling. He needed some humbling.
Oh, he needed some humbling. And then he goes to OU and the first handpicked Riley quarterback and whatever, and he showed some stuff that first year, but obviously then Caleb Williams overtook him. And initially at South Carolina this past year, it didn't look pretty. He wasn't playing behind the best offensive line, and there were times when that played into, as you guys know, Spencer's worst impulses, when he likes to start just dancing around back there, and he wants to get on the Broadway stage and start tapping around before he throws the ball or whatever. It just like he wants to like overly extend the plays, and behind the outside structure, but behind a sieve offensive line without great receivers, it wasn't going so well early on. But they seem to figure out things down the stretch, and something seemed to click in his head. They beat the 2 fabulous opponents in the last 2 regular season games, which was stunning. In one of those games, I think it was the upset against Tennessee. South Carolina had 0 active, healthy running backs. So they had to start Jaheim Bell as their halfback, the H-back tight end guy. Right. And then the backup running backs were like backup receivers, and then like the Wildcat receiver, the Joyner kid, bad. But like Spencer Rattler was just cooking through the air. And Tennessee, they had a good run defense last year. They didn't have the best pass defense, but he exploited them for everything they were worth. And then obviously the next week you go and you light up Clemson too. So it seems like it was starting to click again for him at the end of the year. And you got to give him the caveat at the beginning of the year. Not only was the offensive line not great, but you're working with all these new guys. I guess outside of Stogner, who he had some exposure to in the past. But like this year, he's going to have more, continuity with his teammates and stuff like that. And in conjunction with how well he played at the end of the year, he's got a real shot to salvage something with the draft stock. And it was a really good decision for him to go back to school, because I think it was probably, he had to consider it, at least the idea being alluring of like, holy shit, I just beat Tennessee and I beat Clemson. And in the bowl game, I think they did they lost to Notre Dame at the very end of the bowl game, right? But but
they played well, yeah.
Yeah, they played well and they were ahead for most of it. So it must have been like alluring to him, like thinking about, man, and there's a lot of quarterbacks who are going back to school because the NIL stuff, like Bo Nix and a bunch of those other guys. So he must have thought, man, maybe I'll get drafted here. But I think the better call was going back to school. If he has an awesome year next year, now maybe you move up into the middle rounds. And who knows, if you have a bonanza of a season, maybe you get up into day 2 again.
Yeah, a little reclamation project. I mean, he went against that Tennessee, he went 30 for 37 for 438 or 468, 6 touchdowns.
Cooking.
I mean, jeez. That was like his first few games combined.
He had some nasty throws in that game too.
Yeah, he's always had the arm talent. That's one thing. He's never been short on arm talent. The problem is he knows that he's never been short on arm talent.
Oh yeah.
So he's got some confidence to go and put it in places that he really shouldn't. And I think that's kind of what you see, Steph Curry. Now we see Trae Young, right, taking all the deep shots and everything like that. Like we saw that in college. It's almost Mahomes-ish, where it's like if you have arm talent and you're going out there watching Mahomes, you're just like, oh, I'll just do stuff like this. Like, guys, stop.
And that's who PFF comped him to after his redshirt freshman year. You guys might know that because Spencer Rattler that year had the best PFF under pressure grade since Pat Mahomes' last year at Texas Tech. So they were drawing all these parallels. And I think Spencer Rattler had fallen in love with we're going to scramble around outside of structure and try to create. And then we're going to throw a ball from a weird angle and everyone's going to cheer for me and shit like that. Yeah. Bad habits.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. JP, you want to get into this or that, or what you feeling?
Yeah, why not? Let's go ahead and get to our patented game, this or that. Thor, this or that is a game we play. Basically, we have 2 things, and if you had a gun in your head, you got to choose one. A lot of people try to take the cop out answer and say neither, or whatever else.
I won't do that. Honor. This will all be about honor, boys.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly. So I got a special one for you two, since you're Skull Brothers over here with the Vikings. Randy Moss or Justin Jefferson?
Oh, shit. Man, you started off with the Sophie's choice. This is like the hardest question in my existence.
That's what I do, man.
I have okay. Okay, this isn't a count. Can I ask clarifying questions?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, is this over the entire, or is it over career, and I'm to extrapolate out what I believe the rest of his career to be, or is it one game scenario? You're picking at the peak of their powers. What am I picking?
Give us both if the answers are different.
Yeah, why not? Let's do both.
Okay, the career, I'm going with Jefferson. I think Jefferson will go down as probably the second best receiver of all time. Because I don't know that anyone can pass Jerry Rice for that, but I think that's where we're headed. We're seeing something that's special, that's different. So I take him for that. But as far as a 1-game scenario, I got to take the super freak, just because he's so stupid, and I just want to see him on the field one more time. But he was the funnest guy I ever watched in my lifetime.
Man.
Yeah, I gotta go with Moss simply because that was like the second Vikings jersey I had. I had Carter first, then I had Moss. And
I think I did too. Oh no, I had John Randall before that too. But yeah, I had those two as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
So I think it was, like a lot of people do. It's like, what was your first, what made you love it first or whatever. And that was what made me fall in love was watching him just catch bombs. The Thanksgiving game against Dallas is still one of my favorite, games, top performances of all time, right? Because part of it is because I'm not a Cowboys fan by any stretch of the imagination. Obviously, my allegiances are a bit north, but I would rather see Green Bay win than see Dallas win. So I'm not a Cowboys guy. So with that, watching him cook Dallas on that Thanksgiving game, like that's one of my best memories. And it was simple, right? Like you talk about with other players, like with just the special, the one thing that's your superpower, like the one thing that sets you apart. Like if Randy put his hand up, like if you're even, he's leaving, right? Like it's like, and what was great was nobody could overthrow him, right? Like you got like Culpepper back there Randall Cunningham, like all these guys, like trying to throw it deep to him, and like they're used to overthrowing people. You can't overthrow Moss. It's impossible. He'll get it. But if I'm having and I think this is probably true just of the eras, but if I'm having like a skills competition, like of actual like hands, routes, things like that, like I would take Justin Jefferson because I feel like he's a more complete receiver, whereas Moss was just kind of a cheat code that was like just go deep, I'll hit you, I promise, and come down with it. So I mean, there's a reason we call it mossing people, right? So he's got that kind of signature, whereas Justin's already got some signatures of his career. Obviously, the Buffalo game being the most popular, arguably the best catch ever, up there with Odell's, 3-finger catch as he's getting interfered with. But I mean, if the numbers as they are now with Justin Jefferson, if they continue like this, then at least statistically, he will go down as at least top 3 because he's already at record-setting pace.
It's crazy. Yeah, I mean, how he's open all the time. His route running is great, but he's also a freak athlete. I mean, he's the whole package. I'd probably take Justin Jefferson too. Randy Moss is a Hall of Famer, elite athlete, probably one of the best athletes ever, to be honest. But like you said, I think a lot of times he relied on that, and I don't get that from Justin. I think that even though he's not quite the athlete Moss was, he's still obviously one of the more elite athletes at the wide receiver position. On top of being able to be an elite route runner, which is why he has the numbers that he has, right? So I would take Justin Jefferson, but I thought I'd throw that little tidbit in there for you guys as Viking fans.
Appreciate that.
You guys, you guys have had some great receivers come through there. In the
sure. Yeah. It's one of those, like, when people are like, so what's the most important position? I'm like, well, sure as hell no, it's not wide receiver. Because we've had the best collection of wide receivers in NFL history. If you look at the very top end, if you look at the very top end with Carter and Moss, I mean those are on a lot of people's like number 2 and number 3 of all time. Yeah. And they're like that on a lot of lists. Yardage, touchdowns, like they're up there on every list. And now Jefferson, we're sitting here going, yeah, he'll probably outpace those two. So if mathematically you could have in some statistics, 3 of the top 4 wide receivers and never get a Super Bowl, just get rid of the position. Get rid of the position.
You had to feature Hall of Fame running back too for a while with no quarterback to help him out. And one Adrian Peterson.
Right. Jeez.
Christian Ponder, Tavares Jackson. I mean,
the pain never ends. T-Jack.
Yeah. It never does.
Those were tough times back with Chili.
Oh yeah.
That was a dark time.
And
All
he
right.
just
So
he
I
never
got
he
a
just
couple
never had
more.
confidence on the sideline. Looking at Brad Childress, you're like, this guy, get this bum out of here.
Oh yeah, adding salt to every loss for sure.
Brad Childress. Oh man, that brings back memories. I got three more for us. Normally we do three, but I had that fourth one in there. So I did a kind of a fan vote on Twitter. Had people kind of drop some in there. So I'm gonna just throw them up here. Here's this first one. I feel like this one's not too difficult, but maybe it depends on how you're looking at it. Jalen Hurts or Patrick Mahomes. Obviously, we know these two quarterbacks are going against each other this weekend for the Super Bowl. Trav, will start with you, then we'll go Thor, and then I'll finish this up.
You know, I have bias here, I will admit, but I think who am I kidding? I got to go Patrick Mahomes. He's the best quarterback in the league. Like we got to stop complicating this so much. But no, he's you're never out of it with him. Obviously, I'm rooting for Jalen, and I'm glad that let's just rewind. Could you imagine when Jalen Hurts got benched that this prompt would be up on a podcast screen right now? Like, would you ever imagine that we were like, all right, who's the better quarterback in the Super Bowl, Jalen Hurts or Patrick Mahomes?
Nope.
You might say that about a regular season game. If you say who's the best quarterback, Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes, I mean, I can't believe it. You had OU fans saying, "Man, this guy's not going to get drafted. You know, he's never going to play a meaningful snap. This, that, or the other." And here he is in the Super Bowl. But if that guy rose from being expected to be, you know, a backup, and now he is playing like a guy you would maybe want top 5 on your roster. I don't know if he's a top 5 quarterback, but the way they use him, there aren't 4 better quarterbacks in the NFL that fit that offense like he does. And he's improved as a passer immensely. But Patrick Mahomes, he's the best quarterback in the league. He can make every throw. He extends plays almost like Rodgers-esque, where he kind of dances out to the pocket a little bit. But, I mean, it's hard because, you know, Andy Reid, how much of it is Andy Reid? How much is Eric Bieniemy? How much of it early on we were like, oh, Tyreek Hill can just, you know, take anybody deep, so throw it to him. Well, now he's gone, and Mahomes still is putting up video game numbers. Kelsey seems to be running wide open in the middle of the field. Like, it's like other teams don't have linebackers. It's incredible. Like, he's standing there right in the middle of the field every time. Frustrating. But I do think I'm pulling for Jalen to get this win pretty badly, because I don't know if I can stand all the people that jumped from Dallas to Kansas City living here in Oklahoma. They just magically lost their Dallas jerseys and said, "Oh, I might as well buy another jersey. Oh, they only sell these red number 15 ones. I guess I'll buy one of those. Hey, Chiefs Kingdom, look at me." Like, I'm done with that. So go Birds.
Yeah, I'm happy we got an easy one, a nice breezy one after the last one. Caused me mental consternation. This is an easy one. This one's Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah,
it's not even close. Not even close. I just put it up here because I was like, why did somebody put this up here? and like Travis said, like, for real, if you would have talked to an Oklahoma fan after 2019, even with Jalen Hurts, right, getting second in Heisman voting, nobody's telling you they thought. I didn't think he was going to be good in the league for a couple of years, and I didn't think he would even start for 3-4 years, honestly. And then, you know, for him in his, you know, was it third year to be dang near the MVP, just for everything he's done. Now he's got a great team around him. Don't get me wrong, and this is a larger conversation that we don't have to have right now on, you know, quarterbacks getting drafted to really good teams, right, and then being more successful than quarterbacks that get drafted first overall to really bad teams, a la Brock Purdy. Not that Brock Purdy's not, you know, doing his thing this year. Don't get me wrong, but you talk to anybody in the Big 12, they not tell you that they thought Brock Purdy, who everybody was like, oh, Mr. Irrelevant, because that's what they felt like he deserved based off of his career. And not that he wasn't good. He was okay. He was good at Iowa State. But you know what I mean? Why is he doing what he's doing with the 49ers? I mean, they have a great team, right? And they're helping them out. They have really good head coach, good play caller, helps quarterbacks. So,
Is this the year? Who's the starting quarterback next year for San Francisco, Thor? Who do you think?
It's got to. I think it's going to be Trey Lance. Because
is he any good?
We'll find out. I mean, after they made Purdy good, after he was literally the last pick of the draft as a rookie, like Lance better show something ASAP. But I think that's the correct course of action here. Like I had seen the rumors about like shopping Lance. I think those were coming out before the Purdy injury. I just don't like now. I don't think that you can trade him because you don't know what the health status of Purdy is. And even if Purdy was totally healthy, you trade Lance. If assuming that Garoppolo leaves, that's everyone's supposition because he wants to be a starter, then you'd have to go out and pay like a veteran backup. Like what's the going rate now for a QB2? Like $5 million or something, $6 million.
Yeah.
They don't have a ton of cap room, so why not just keep those two guys? They're both on cheap contracts and see what happens. If Purdy might not be healthy enough, like to go at the start, you never know with those things. Then you have to undergo
apparently
John or
Yeah, apparently it'll probably go into the season.
Yeah.
Last I heard. So you're going with Lance, who hasn't played football since like 2012, and nobody saw any of his games. They did. I don't know if they happened or not for the most part, but it's interesting because he hardly played in college. He's hardly played in the NFL, but at the beginning of the year next year, I mean, who's going to be? Was it Josh Johnson? Is gonna have to be your backup if Purdy can't go? I mean, like, what are you going to
believe he was still in the NFL?
I don't think he knew he was in the NFL.
Yeah,
that was how he played. So it's like, I don't know. It'll be interesting because they're gonna have to pick up another quarterback anyways. I mean, I don't know. It'll be interesting. What do you think is I know we're going a little bit over time, but I got to ask. We've talked about every OU quarterback except maybe the most incendiary conversation, dramatic one. What do you think Baker's future is in the league? Where do you think he plays next year?
Oh, I thought you were going to ask me about like Reb Bomar or Blake Bell or something.
Blake Bell's got a Super Bowl to get ready for. I don't want to bother him.
No, I love the Belldozer. No strays will be shot towards the Belldozer. I mean, as far as Baker, like, yeah, I mean, his like next year I don't expect him to be a starter, no. But like I ain't gonna be one of those guys to stick a fork in him. Like he can run a system, right? Like so it seems like he's dropped into that phylum of being between like the 24th and 42nd best quarterback in the league, and those guys kind of just the ones that are not under contract, they just float around and see if which one gets to be a starter that year, and the other one's got to be backups. But yeah, I mean, it's just going to be that way. But yeah.
Did you know that the last quarterback to get recruited by Oklahoma and finish his career at Oklahoma was Blake Bell?
No shit. Wow. Yep. Belldozer truly is a legend.
Yeah.
That guy around the goal line was fucking scary in college.
He was.
When he came in for those goal line ones.
Yeah.
Well, as Kansas, because that's obviously I'm a Kansas graduate. Like when I'd be watching those kids, I was like, God damn it! Like he's bigger than the defensive linemen we have, and he's more athletic than them too. Like he just run people over. It's like shit. God damn it! The Belldozer back in.
He was so big, and he was highly ranked out of high school.
He was.
I mean, he was one of the top dual threat guys in the country, and that's what was so funny is like when we see him, we're like, who is this guy? Like this guy isn't a quarterback. Like what's going on? Because then we see him like the guy's massive. Like, what is this, like, Pillsbury throwboy type situation? Like, can this guy actually sling it? And, hey, like I said, he's the last one to start and finish his career from high school and beyond at Oklahoma. It seems
that's
crazy.
Pretty wild. That's got to be the longest one in the nation. Like, I mean, I'm not going to go back and do all the research, figure out if there's a school.
Yeah, you'll let us know. You'll have to let us know.
No, I ain't doing it. You got to do that, Travis. But it's got to be the longest one in the nation. It would have to be.
I'll ask my my co-host on radio, Tyler McComas. He knows all that weird stuff. So
yeah, let's send him on it.
Dude, he's a college football encyclopedia. There's no doubt about it. But well, cool. Do we have any more this or that's to finish on?
Yeah, just a couple more real quick.
All right, cool,
It's
cool,
funny,
cool.
funny you guys actually brought up Thor. You brought up Rhett Bomar because I had a question, including Rhett Bomar.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Who's the bigger 5-star bust, Rhett Bomar or Trey Matoyer?
I go Bomar. Maybe it was because more specific to me, but I thought Rhett Bomar was gonna be really good back in the day. So I was more disappointed about that one. And it just never worked out for him. Even when he dropped down a level, that I was like, oh, he's gonna rip it up down here, and you didn't really get that as much either. So I was disappointed.
Right. I think I'm going with Rhett Bomar just due to the just magnificent fashion in which his career imploded, right? I mean that class was crazy. I mean, when you look at the all-time highest recruits in Oklahoma history on 247, Bomar's up there. I mean, he was going to be on the team with Adrian Peterson. You saw that going, that was supposed to be the original, hey, we got the best running back in the country, best quarterback in the country. Let's go beat everybody by 50. And then we almost got the death penalty for that. And they were able to get out of it. But, Big Red Sports and Imports, there's no more synonymous business, unfortunately, with a player than Big Red Sports and Imports. Even so much Danny Stutzman posted a tweet the other day and said, hey, I've been here 2 years. I need a ride, man. Who's got an NIL deal for a car? And people are commenting man, where's Big Red Sports and Imports? So when you need them, oh man, they were way before their time, man. Ask Omar for one. It's still I'm wondering when that will what generation of OU fans will kind of forget about that? Probably none. But at the same time, I think that's why I got to go with Bomar. It's it was just the crash and burn, the mushroom cloud over the crash and burn was so magnificent.
Legends never die.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rhett Bomar was definitely bigger of the two. Obviously, Trey Matoyer was pretty big. He's really great receiver coming out of high school, but it didn't really pan out. I forgot, Trav, remind me, was it an arrest that got him booted off the team? I think I was the beginning of high school when he was
it was legal trouble.
It was some sort of legal trouble that, unfortunately had him not live up to his potential and be off the team completely. All right, last one. We always do a food one. Now, this is probably one of the more interesting food ones we've had, coming from a fan on Twitter. Hospital food or airline food?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I know, Trav. I know. That's why I was like, dang. I was like, that's kind of a good question.
Okay, I got another clarifying question.
Go ahead, Thor.
With the airline one, you're basically stuck with what they bring you on the cart, right? Yeah. But in the hospital, there's a difference between what you're given on the cart, and then, for instance, you're able to get on foot and go down to the cafeteria. They got good stuff in some of those hospital cafeterias. So are we talking, you're bed stricken in the hospital and you have to accept what you're given there? You have the gelatin.
Yeah.
Yes.
Bed stricken.
Oh, you got to do that.
All right.
Then I'm going airline. But if I have the ability to get up and visit that cafeteria, I'm going hospital.
Yeah, it's interesting because if we're going full context, right? If I'm in the airplane, there's not much more context that's necessary, right? But if I'm in the hospital, am I just there to answer this question by ordering food, by getting food brought to me? Or is it oh, you can either eat airline food on your way to vacation, or you just got, all of your limbs amputated, and now they're going to bring you some food. If I'm just comfortable in both places, I might go hospital just based on the digs. You know what I mean? Relaxing. I'm 6'2". I don't really.
You got to take home field advantage out. You're at home. You're in your dining room and they bring you two on platters. One of them, they brought it from the hospital. One they bring from the airline. There's heated the same. In that scenario, which one are you grabbing?
Totally in a vacuum, I'm probably going airline.
Okay, yeah.
Probably. I haven't been to the hospital in a really long time, though. I don't know what they're serving. Anybody? I don't know. We'll have to ask the chat. Anybody been in the hospital lately? If so, I hope you're doing okay. Hope you've recovered. But I don't know. We're getting a lot.
Hospitals, they keep the gelatin business in business. Like,
Right.
when have you had Jello recently? I haven't even seen Jello for years.
Actually, Thor, the College World Series is keeping Jello.
Oh, they
in-
do
in
Jello?
business. Did you not pay attention to Twitter during the College World Series? They had the Jello shot challenge.
Oh, Jello shots. That is okay. That
Yeah.
is probably the last.
I think
Yeah,
it would be
that's-
interesting to determine how much of the world's Jello is involved with alcohol. Like what percentage of it? I feel like it's high percentage, but like, yeah, in College World Series, they have the CWS shot challenge, and like you should check it out on Twitter. Like I think Ole Miss did like 10,000 Jello shots or something like that. Like
Wow.
you had
Wait,
companies.
really? Like with
Yeah.
the athletes or like the students?
I mean, it was supposed to be the fans.
Okay,
But I
because
definitely
it's like
saw
real
some
Jello.
players.
Yeah. Okay.
I definitely saw. Oh yeah, and there were $4.50 per Jello shot, which is highway
Jesus.
robbery.
Yeah, that's not American. Yeah, what's American is you put Kharkov in the whole thing. You know, you're 19 years old, and you know it doesn't cost you that much. You fill up the whole thing. You got the little red sippy cups, and now everyone gets drunk for not a lot of money. Now we're having fun. You can't be charging $4.50 for a Jello shot. Are we no better than the beasts in the field?
See if I don't know if you guys can read the numbers. Anyways, regardless, Arkansas did 8,672. Ole Miss, excuse me, I misspoke. Ole Miss did 18,777.
Wow.
Last place was Stanford, 231.
Jesus, Stetson Bennett did more than that before he was knocking on doors in Dallas a couple weeks ago.
And you know what? Speaking of cities in Texas, second to last place was your Texas Longhorns. So Texas Longhorns nearly pulling up the rear, probably because they had an early exit. So, but yeah, Oklahoma, a respectable 843 Jello shots. You know, not too bad. Good enough for fourth place. But yeah, so it's a whole thing, man. Like when you start talking about 25,000 Jello shots and 30,000 Jello shots, that's a bunch of gelatin.
That's a lot. Yeah, I was going to say I'd watched Kansas play Texas in basketball recently, and I can confirm the Longhorns miss a lot of shots.
Can confirm. We appreciate that victory over them, by the way. I will be in Norman Saturday watching your Jayhawks take on my Sooners. So,
well, worst of luck to you this weekend.
Yeah. Same to you.
That's going to be a good game. I'm excited for that one.
For y'all, yeah, absolutely. I think we just lost to Baylor, so
we did.
Yeah,
it's just a rough year.
Yeah, lost by 10.
But you guys have talent, right? On basketball, didn't you guys have like a couple good recruits? Or I don't follow basketball.
We have two good 4-stars coming in this next class. One's like a top 50-ish player, top 60 player, 6'6" shooting guard. The other, like, we don't have any bigs coming in, and that's the problem. We need to get bigs, right? Like OSU cooked us on the boards. Like a lot of teams cook us on the boards and down low because we've got Tanner Groves basically as our starting forward center type situation, and he's not a big, right?
He's tall. Big.
He's tall. Like the difference between being a tall player and being a big, like completely different, right? So he does have a higher 3-point shooting percentage career-wise than Kobe Bryant. So he can fill it up from the outside occasionally, but he's famous. You know Tanner Groves. He's famous for his game against Kansas in the tournament where he had 35 for Eastern Washington.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that kid could that wasn't happy about that. That was an annoying game. Yeah.
I bet. Well, cool. You got any more of this or that, JP, or we signing off?
That's all we had, man. That's all the time we had. But Thor, man, thank you so much for coming on. It was a blast, man.
You got it. Yeah. Thanks for having me on, guys. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, no
Enjoyed it.
doubt. Appreciate it. And yeah, have a terrible time Saturday.
Worst of
I'll
luck to
see
you.
you soon.
Yeah.
We'll connect over some Viking stuff soon. We got a lot to talk about.
Dude, absolutely. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
All right. See you guys.